Hello, my friends. Welcome to Two Priests on the Patio podcast. Here we gather in the quiet space between science and soul with Reverend Canon Sue-Ann Ward and the Venerable Jeff Ward, partners in ministry and in life. We ask the deeper questions. What does it mean to be awake in this world? To suffer, to doubt, to believe, to begin again and again. This is a sanctuary for conversation. So come as you are. Hello, my friends. Welcome back. And you're going to notice there's a big difference. We are now two priests on the patio. And Shay.
Mostly Shay.
With Shay.
With Shay. Oh my goodness. We have to talk about this. We have to talk about what the evolution has been over the last couple of months, why the new name, and where are we going? We're still going to talk about the awakened brain for a little while, but where are we going?
Okay. So Two Priests on the Patio isn't actually new. It's actually, what is it they say? What is old is new again. Sue-Ann and I started Two Priests on the Patio during the COVID-19 pandemic when we were in lockdown. Fortunately, the two of us were able to not only just be at home together, but work together. And part of that work was us trying to understand how we could connect with our people and our churches in a way that would be meaningful to them. We thought about just recording sermons and then releasing those, but yes, both of us received input from parishioners that led us down a path that we ended up at with Two Priests on the Patio. And we were told that what would be really helpful to them is if we recorded something where the two of us were talking about Jesus, talking about scripture, talking about life, and then just sharing that with them each week. And so that's what we did. And we started out, as almost everybody did during the pandemic. We figured we put a real background. In other words, we sat on our patio and recorded this. Eventually we realized, like everyone else did, when it's raining or when there's construction going on or other things, you have to move indoors. So we bought a green screen.
Wow.
Which didn't go very well at first. You know how you get those ghostly images and so on? Well, we experienced all of that. Sue-Ann learned how to become a professional video audio editor. Sorry, Jim, our producer, but she was really good at it. And anyway.
So she's
that remains to be seen.
Teacher, priest, and videographer.
It was really fun, actually.
She really got into it and got very serious about it and was very precise. She's very precise when it comes to editing, but it was very helpful for us. Unfortunately, and we always included our church dog, Lucy.
Yes. As
I found out from someone I'd never met last night, she had already heard about Lucy the church dog. Lucy became famous. She was always in our videos. Sue-Ann would normally have to hold her so she wouldn't bark, especially at the squirrels in our backyard.
Yeah.
But also we had to fight with the air conditioning units, especially one of our neighbors. It seemed to be constantly on. I don't know what temperature it was set at, but it was constantly on. And Sue-Ann figured out how to filter out that frequency of sound so that it wouldn't be so distracting. So that's what I mean. She got very serious and it worked quite well.
But why did you just decide sort of in the summer that it wasn't the right feel anymore for, like, not anymore, but in terms of building the podcast, that going back to this other foundation was more important?
So we started out by wanting to use the word awakened or awakening or something along those lines, because the basis for the first number of episodes was the awakened brain.
Right. And
so we came up with a name, Awakening with the Wards, and then nobody could find us. There's all kinds of awakened, awakening, awake, all kinds of things.
And
podcasts.
Very many wards, unfortunately.
Yeah. Wards doing interesting things. So we thought, well, this isn't working out very well. We should try something else. And we tossed around a bunch of names, and you know what? We're two priests on the patio just fits us. Mm-hmm. It's just who we are and who we aspire to be someday, perhaps in retirement. And
yes.
Sorry, what was that R word?
Well, it's evolving. It's not. We're not retiring. Nobody's retiring. It's you retire from one thing and you
to something.
To something. Yes.
To something.
But it's okay. So there are a number of things that are really interesting to me. Like one of them, Dr. Miller talks a lot about nature and God being in nature, and nature is so important to both of you. And I thought it was really fitting when you said let's return to Two Priests on the Patio, because I felt like that's so much of what you bring to service, to your work, to how you help people.
Yeah, whether we're talking about being at our little cabin up north, or whether we're talking about wilderness walks on Saturday mornings, and Sue-Ann can talk more about that, because that is a great example of a practice of how to be in nature, be in creation, but also be at one with God and in community together in a way that is a very contemplative practice.
So on Saturday mornings, the Church of the Incarnation now has wonder walks. Yes. Jeff tried to convince us that we should call it Walking on the Wild Side.
I still think it's the best name.
But having listened to the words of a song, I thought perhaps not.
Yes.
So Mary Ellen said Wonder Walk. She's a parishioner at Church of the Incarnation, and everybody loved it.
Just remember, I'm a child of 70s rock, so that might be the problem here. I don't know.
So, but the beautiful thing is that we are part of the natural world.
Yes,
it's not about going into nature or that it being separate from us. We are part of it. Mm-hmm. And so it's important that we spend time being aware of that, because when we do, we have those alpha wavelengths that connect us to the natural world, right? We've learned that there is high amplitude alpha wavelengths from the Earth's crust all the way a mile up, that all living things give off that wavelength, excepting sometimes humans. We sometimes, when we're, achieving and striving and stressing, we don't. But when we fall into that natural rhythm, then our brains too give off that high amplitude alpha that connects us with everything else and helps us to see that we are one.
How did we get to this place where there's so much division right now? And you're talking about, the awakened mind and the awakened heart, and the alpha waves that you get when you are breathing in nature and loving people and giving to one another and being altruistic. But then so many people, they look around the world and they look at, and they're scrolling on their phones and they're thinking, I don't think they're in the same alpha as me. So what is going on? How do we talk to people about getting through these pieces that are so difficult right now, and getting into alpha when it seems like there is alpha, but it's a different kind of alpha going on?
I think we'll go back to another part of Lisa Miller's studies and book, and that is the achieving awareness. That's where that focus is. And that's when Sue-Ann is talking about when those alpha waves are not prevalent. People are, and you're talking about scrolling on your phone, etc., and being so caught up in the world that you can't be in a place where you're centered. You can't be in a place where you're at one with all of that oneness. In other words, all things in the rest of creation that apparently is operating in that alpha wave. Right. So when you're in that achieving awareness space, you're sort of shutting that out. And what we are talking about, and that's what a main focus of this podcast has been, is to get into a place where you remove yourself from the achieving awareness, plug yourself into this awakened awareness. In other words, just allow yourself to experience it, to be who you naturally would be.
Yes,
because that other that other space you're talking about is an unnatural space for us. That's why we feel stressed. That's why we feel, overwhelmed, anxious.
Yeah.
And then when we don't achieve and we feel like failures, and then we're feeling depressed about it, that's all because we are trying to do this achieving thing instead of being awakened and aware. And that's what we've been trying to focus on, is how to get to a space where we can allow ourselves to be who we are as part of this creation. Now, we believe God's creation, or some higher power, where we call the higher power in our faith God.
Yes.
But there are many other descriptions of this creative spirit, this creative power, this power bigger than us. And if we can allow ourselves to be truly connected that way, then we experience this awakenedness that allows us to be on that same wavelength that Sue-Ann's talking about. And we should probably talk later about how that helps us physically, emotionally, spiritually, to allow ourselves to be in that space at that alpha wavelength.
No, I mean, I say talk about it now, because I think one of the reasons people want to tune in and hear you and have these conversations is that they're looking for not necessarily an answer, but looking for some sort of practice and one of the things that I've heard about the show in terms of feedback is, or the podcast, not show, is that they've never really talked to a priest, and they've never, it's really good to be able to hear a priest speak so naturally about something they're really worried about and thinking about and kind of wrestling with and too embarrassed to come and talk to you about at the church.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm hoping that when they hear this or see this, they'll feel more comfortable in approaching one of us and talking to us, because we would love to talk to people about it. But why don't you answer Shay's question?
Well, I wanted to hearken back to the achieving brain and the troubles we see in our society nowadays. And I think, when we are using our achieving brain, when we are just striving, we're focused on ourselves, on our gain, on improving our situation or our power or our image. We're not concerned about others. And yet we were made to be concerned about others. We were made for community. And we've learned that when we are behaving in an altruistic way, when we are doing for others, caring for others, we are healthier, and so is everybody else. And if we could somehow invite people to live into that, just give it a chance. Take a risk.
Take a risk.
Because I would say the converse of that we are seeing more and more every day is that when people, we just talked about, you can be anxious or you might be depressed because you're pursuing things and you're not achieving those things. But also what it's caused is people to feel like there's something working against them. So then they feel grievance and they lash out at other people. And the result of that has been like a real polarization of our society.
Yes.
And a constant sense that I'm supposed to grieve all the time, and therefore I should be lashing out at people or I should be blaming people. And that just causes a greater division instead of this unity, this oneness that we were actually created to be a part of.
And a constant sense of judgment. We judge all the time. We get out of bed. Are we going to have a good day, a bad day? Do I like this shirt or I don't like this shirt? Or, it's just all the time. We look at somebody, we judge them.
Yes.
Or I judge the person on the road who just cut me off. What kind of driver is that?
But that is a dualistic way of being. That is inherently us and them.
Yes, it's war. It's always a war.
And when we move towards non-duality, when it's about all of us, and when we see the grace and the goodness and the godliness, the sacredness in everything and everyone else, then we can feel gratitude. And gratitude is a great blessing. When I am not judging somebody, but when I am looking at things, accepting them as they are and appreciating them, then I can feel grateful for life itself and for all of the creatures and the people and the beautiful surroundings that we all enjoy.
Yeah, and it changes what you feel like inside. Gratitude, like being altruistic, like giving and being of service. But I wonder, in your day-to-day life, and of course it's going to be different, I think, because you are a priest. Do you feel or see the same division in day-to-day life that we are experiencing online?
Okay, I don't.
Yes.
I see it when I turn on the news.
Yes, yes.
I certainly see it on social media. I don't see it in the beautiful people I interact with on a daily basis, and maybe I'm just in this sweet little cocoon. I don't know. But I don't. What I see is people taking care of each other, neighbors trying to help neighbors, and people being good and contributing and making things better. Mm-hmm. And I hope that's actually much more prevalent than we seem to think it is when we're looking at screens or
I agree with you, actually. I think I see more good day to day in person than I do online, and I feel as though we're being fed this algorithm of negativity, and that everyone is against everyone else. But when you walk down the street or go to the grocery store, or you're walking your dog, and people are saying good morning to each other or hello and talking to strangers, that's what I see.
I think that's generally true, but I'm going to say that after spending 20 years in a corporate environment that is all about achieving and all about even taking advantage of other people so that you can achieve more.
And being rewarded for it.
And being rewarded for it. In fact, to be quite honest, the more you're able to take advantage, the more you would be rewarded, sure. Yes. And it was very demoralizing at times. And some people, like my wife, can tell you I would come home very grumpy from work often because it was so out of sync with what I wanted to experience, right? I wanted to experience altruism. I wanted to experience care. And sometimes when I tried to demonstrate that, I would be punished for that. So all I'm saying is I think generally I agree with both of you, but I do believe that we have certain structures in our society that are not well suited for what we were talking about. You get outside of that and you get into your community, you get into your neighborhood, you go with people. I also believe Sue-Ann and I are, look, church is never perfect. But I do think it isn't. But I do think that our view of the world is a bit distorted because we tend to gather with people who see a real benefit of helping other people and being part of a community that looks after each other. So, and I'm very glad because that means that what I do on an everyday basis is more in sync with who I am and who I think I should be.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. But I would, let me just correct myself. I see a lot of good, but what I also see is that there's a lot of suffering. That there's a lot more people who are, down or depressed or feeling anxious or isolating or, feeling disconnected. And I wonder, one of the things that you're trying to do is reach out by having a podcast, and even though we're in this little room, it goes everywhere. It goes, to whomever can listen. But what do you think the role is of your churches in kind of creating that bridge right now between, 2019 and where we are now post-pandemic, or, sort of, I don't know what we call what we are in now, but this new world, like what's your role in terms of expanding that service and care?
So I think that there are forces in this world, often political forces, that are trying to pit people against each other, that are trying to raise the grievance level. And obviously it's not healthy. I think that there is some selfishness, some power seeking that is drawing resources that everybody should be sharing and putting it into the pockets of a very few people. And it's making things difficult. And we're constantly getting hard messages, from the media, because that's what sells, right? So we're up against that. And I think the antidote to that is truth and love. We tell the truth that things aren't that bad.
Yes.
Right? That things don't have to be that bad anyway. There are certain people creating them.
Yeah.
But there is a lot that is going well. There are a lot of people doing amazing things, taking care of other people, taking care of wildlife, taking care of the environment. And it's incumbent upon us to become part of that, to walk alongside those folks, to help them to achieve their goals. So I really see the role of the church is to look at the community and to say, how can we contribute to the fullness of life in our neighborhoods and beyond? And then come alongside people who are already doing good work.
Yes. And
strengthen them and uplift them and inspire them and get other people on board.
Is it harder? Is it harder now in 2025 than it was in 2020? No, 2019.
To do what?
To help, to partner, to collaborate, for communities to receive what you're trying to give and share.
I think there's a greater need than there was in 2019 today for many people. As Sue Ann was saying, the greatest difference, I think, is that wealth inequality has just gotten so much worse in that time. And it's meant that people are struggling with, prices of food, housing, and we happen to live in a very highly populated area in the GTA, which means that, there's even higher demand and therefore the prices are higher.
Yes.
And it's very hard for people just to get by. And so for a lot of people, I'm going from one thing to the next, and then I collapse, and then I get up tomorrow and I do it again. And no wonder why some people are feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But I also think that there's plenty of people still in our lives, in our communities, who want to help people to deal with those things. And I don't think either of us go through a day where we don't have a conversation about that with somebody, a partner or someone else who we work with, or people that we are potentially going to work with. Yeah. I've had several meetings this week with people who help people and want to help people more, and we're just trying to figure out how we can do that. So I think there's lots of people. And I will say one other thing. Lisa's research reinforces this reality, that it's truth, that not only do people benefit from us helping them, but we benefit from helping others. People in our world, I think they recognize that. You can't go and help people the way our communities do, our faith communities do, and not feel better when you go home. And it's a lot easier to go home and sleep at night when you know you just helped a lot of people.
Yeah, because it's immediate. What you get back is immediate.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't think all churches are created equal, unfortunately.
What does that mean?
Okay,
can I say that's a turn of phrase. I think we're all created equal. I don't think we all behave equally. How's that?
I think there are people who call themselves Christians who may actually be more Christian nationalist, who do not follow the teachings of Jesus and who are not trying to make things better. And who are actually okay with people of certain color skin or certain abilities or certain
ethnic groups.
Certain ethnic groups, people who love certain people. And those aren't the teachings of Jesus. And so I think there are people who could be relying on healthy churches for help who don't come to us because they are afraid that we are all the same.
I think you're hitting it.
We are all cruel.
I think you're hitting it because I think here's the rub, right? Is that it's the people who are the loudest that are heard. And it feels and it seems like there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the teachings of Jesus are. And do you think part of your job is to kind of keep like telling the news stories, like what are the teachings? Because there's a lot of confusion about what Jesus's teachings were. I never learned that Jesus didn't like certain people. I thought
that was never Jesus.
I thought Jesus was really inclusive and had a big tent.
I don't know. Are we supposed to do a book plug at this point, Sue-Ann, or not?
Sure.
We've been reading a book.
A new book.
It's a brand new book written by John Fugelsang called Separation of Church and Hate. And John was raised in a very Roman Catholic upbringing, but what he's really does in this book is he says this, and he does this in many chapters. So this is what you're being told. This is what those folks, this is the part of the Bible they are quoting. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to tell you what the Bible actually says and what Jesus actually taught, which is so radically different than what you're hearing from those folks. Mm-hmm. But you were talking about social media, and I always feel uncomfortable doing this as we're doing a podcast. But quite often, or most of the time, when you go into social media, whether it's YouTube or other platforms where you're searching for content, the algorithms are all designed to take you in a certain direction. Mm. And it's usually a direction that is, conspiracy theories or horrible stuff or controversial things or hateful things, instead of taking you down a path that would actually lead you to things we have been talking about, which is, I think, more enlightening and certainly more centering and a lot less violent or grievance culture kind of stuff. And I really think that if that was the opposite, I think many more people would be hearing and seeing things about church or faith communities that are much more positive. But instead what they're getting, and these people that Sue-Ann's talking about are feeding into that process because they know what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. If I say these terrible, outrageous things, millions of people are going to watch me, listen to me, and I will become famous and wealthy.
Yes.
Those are not
Apparently
people who
works.
It does work, unfortunately, but those are not people following the teachings of Jesus. And I was talking about this book that John wrote, and he deals with this head on. And he does it in a brilliant way, in a very funny way, because he's also a comedian, but he does it in a way. We disagree on a few theological points.
He's really hard on Paul.
But not many. Not many.
But
because
Paul tried so hard.
Yes, and he does admit that. He does admit that Paul did try very hard. And I always give Paul a little room, because here's a guy who's writing letters that he thinks are only going to be read by two people at one end of the post, and instead it's being read thousands of years later as though it's the teachings of Jesus.
Yes.
And that is the horrible thing. I think if he knew that was going to happen, I think he would have written things very differently. But he's also living out his faith in real time while he's trying to learn what it means to follow Jesus, just like all of us have to do, right?
So then, is one of the challenges for you both, coming from an Anglican background, Anglican priest, is it to keep reinterpreting the teachings of Jesus for the new times that we are living, and to keep sort of reinforcing them, even though maybe you think, everyone that's here is an Anglican and they understand the teachings of Jesus, but maybe they don't. Maybe that's part of what you do.
It is.
I'm asking.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is. Part of the beauty of Jesus' teaching, though, is because he was of the wisdom tradition, his stories are open-ended. We have the story of Martha and Mary. Jesus goes and he visits the home of Martha and Mary sits at Jesus' feet listening to him as he's teaching, and Martha is around, working around in the kitchen, and finally gets frustrated and wants Jesus to tell her sister Mary to come and help her.
Yes.
And Jesus says, no, Mary's chosen a good way here.
He actually says the right way, but yes.
Yes, although I would argue that we need a balance of action and contemplation.
Sorry, can I back up and just say, and John Fugelsang says this often, what we just highlighted was it gets translated from Greek, and sometimes that can be translated in different ways into English. Sorry, please go ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But the thought that I used to have in my head was that the story ends and we don't know what happens. Mm-hmm. After those words are said, there is space. And I think the space created is for us in our lives to think about this and to think about how we will act. Will we, as Martha, go and sit down beside Mary and listen? Or maybe will Mary get up and go into the kitchen and either help Martha or trade places with her? We don't know what's going to happen, and so we have to think about it. And I think part of opening up the gospel and helping people to hear the teachings of Jesus is to present them such that people have to wrestle with them and think about them. There aren't easy answers.
Oh man, that is so good. Because you just dropped a few things that we don't hear often. One is that Jesus came from the wisdom tradition. And wisdom, it indicates contemplation, reflection, process. I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I don't think Christianity is often presented as contemplation, like mindfulness, like Zen meditation or something. It's seen as this is the word, and you're saying it's the word, but it's the word that we sit with.
Absolutely, because the only way we can truly get to know the divine and our true self is to go inward.
Jesus spoke not only the message, like the content, but how he presented it. All of it was done in context because he was thinking, how can I communicate effectively to the people of the day? And we have to do the same thing today. We can't be communicating it the way he would have communicated it 2,000 years ago. We can still offer...
on rocks.
Or in the dirt, which he wrote messages in the dirt. So instead what I think we have to do is we have to say, well, what was the premise? What was he trying to communicate to these folks? And how would we communicate that today? Well, one of the ways we're doing it is what we're doing right now. He obviously wasn't doing, podcasts 2,000 years ago. In terms of interpreting, I think what our role really is to say, look, we can definitely highlight when people are using Jesus's teachings in a way that are not meant to be used that way. So if you're doing something that is harmful and not loving, that can't be what Jesus was teaching. He's not teaching about things that are meant to be hateful, harmful, and so on. So if that's how you're interpreting it, you probably should go back and look at it again. I also totally agree with what Sue-Ann said, which was often he'll say parable after parable, for instance. And even the people of the day were struggling to figure out, so what is he trying to get across here? I heard that story, but now I'm hearing this. And I think he was trying to say, look, maybe you won't get the idea with this one, so I'll give you this one, and I'll give you this one. So I think our role is to create a safe space for people to read about these teachings, talk about them, and figure out how can that apply to me in my life. And what you were saying earlier, how can I be centered? How can I be part of a loving community? And how can I be connected to this oneness, to this greater power, something greater than me? And how can I use this to be able to do that?
Because it's about experience too. It's not all just head knowledge. It's not all just knowing the right doctrine and being able to say the right things.
Yes.
It's about having an experiential relationship with something bigger than us.
Yes, it's a practice. It's the fruit that comes out of the practice that you change or you evolve or something else evolves in you because you are in the practice struggling.
We are transformed.
We are transformed. Yes.
And the process should lead to relationship, which you mentioned earlier. So for God, for Jesus, for what we call the Christ, in other words, the Spirit that's working at all times, is all about relationship.
I'm very curious about something, because, and you know, bear with me, because it does seem like I'm going in a different direction, but we'll get back here. I'm curious about how each of you separately found and developed your relationship with Jesus or with Christ. It was separate, right? Of course. Or was it?
I think it was both.
Oh, okay. See, okay.
Yes. So I can remember wanting to deepen my faith from a very young age. I think in a previous podcast I told a story about going to music lessons and discovering a Bible study and wanting to be part of that. And I would have been about 8 years old at that time. So for me, there was always something drawing me towards spiritual things. I have a sister, Nancy, who was a very spiritual person, and I can remember doing like liturgical dance with her outside our cottage. We must have looked ridiculous, but it was lovely, and it it fed my soul.
Yes.
So I think there was a separateness, but there was also a coming together, a deepening of our friendship, and eventually us dating, and us deciding together, we wanted to go and worship somewhere together.
Yes.
And, with raising our children, making sure that we raised our children in a faith tradition, which for us was Christianity. So I think it was both. I think, Jeff and I both were nurturing our faith before we really came together as partners. And then we have been more intentional about walking the journey together and supporting each other on our journeys, even when we don't agree. I mean, part of being at seminary together that was really wonderful.
You went to seminary together at the same time?
Same time, same classes.
Wow.
But the conversations that we would have, driving into Toronto in our car, talking about things that we had read, or, driving home after a lecture and wrestling with what the instructor had said, and learning from each other and saying, "Oh, I didn't even hear that."
Yeah. Yes. That's so fascinating.
Until we got together, we definitely had different experiences. So I was born a Southern Baptist in Atlanta, Georgia, and my father was he called himself an atheist. Sue-Ann and I realized over time that he was not an atheist. He was just what we now call de-churched, someone who ran away from the church because the church was so inconsistent with his life experience and his beliefs. But I always took my faith for granted from as I was growing up, because my mother and we always went to church, even when my siblings decided, my father gave them the choice and said, "You don't have to go if you don't want to, you can stay home with me." So I think they liked sleeping in, so they stayed home, but I always went to church with my mother, sang in choirs and did all sorts of things. But I did that in the United Church in Canada, because my mother had been raised a Methodist, and she found that to be the church that she found most consistent with what she grew up with.
When she moved to Canada.
When we moved to Canada. And then I met some folks, and to be quite honest, I was driven mostly by, at least I thought at the time, mostly by the fact that they were very altruistic and they were very involved in community. And I thought, I really want to be part of that. And I'm not seeing that in the church I'm in, but they were Roman Catholic. So to be able to do that, I ended up becoming a Roman Catholic, a member of the Roman Catholic Church. So that required me to go to many classes to learn how to be a Roman Catholic. And then I had to be baptized, confirmed, and receive communion for the first time in the Roman Catholic Church as an adult. Well, while I was in those classes, I felt a move of the Spirit in such a way that I felt like I was called to be a priest. Mm-hmm. So that really changed my perspective on my faith, and my whole perspective and how I dealt with faith and how I became much more serious about my faith began at that point in time. Now, I decided not to become a priest. I was convinced by a Basilian priest not to do that, because I really also wanted to be married and have children, and those things were not compatible in the Roman Catholic Church. So,
yes.
Which I also believe was the Spirit getting me ready, because Sue Ann was Roman Catholic, and that way we could both get married, you see. And
so you both were Roman Catholic and then evolved into, or some people might say devolved, into Anglican.
So
kidding.
This is where we get into what touchy subjects, but the reality that even though we all say we're followers of Christ, you can see that different denominations, or in other words, different ways to practice that faith, has caused different divisions. Whether it's the Roman Catholic Church, or whether you're talking about Eastern Orthodox churches, or whether you're talking about what we call Protestant churches. Having said that, we ended up becoming Anglicans, where we pride ourselves in what we call via media, the middle way. In other words, we're neither Roman Catholic nor Protestant. We straddle the line between the two. So I think it's perfect for us, because we really feel like we should be all together, or we should all be following Jesus. And it's a lot easier to do that when you can say, well, we at least straddle those two divides.
Yes.
And hopefully, well, we're both very involved with interfaith as well. So we also believe there are many routes to God. And I'd like to say that even Pope Francis said that. He said, there's one God, and we all have these different ways to get there, and none of them is exclusive, which is very anti-Roman Catholic teaching and very anti-Christian teaching for many denominations who believe Jesus is the only way to get to God, and we don't believe that. So,
my mom used to say that. My mom was an Anglican, but she loved church, loved lots of different churches and temples, and she used to say that she believes God loves all of us and Jesus loves us. So why would God give one religion to only one people? There's got to be other ways. So it's just that this is our way. This is our language. And I love that, because she was always so inclusive. And I also remember one more story about Claudette.
Can I just say, she is 100% correct. Go ahead.
She also had a very good friend who had a son who was gay. And this friend said she couldn't accept her son because he was gay. And my mother she was, outraged. And she said, why go to church then? Why go to church if you can't love your son because he's gay? It does not make any sense.
Well, if Jesus said you have to love everyone, love your neighbor as yourself. Oh, by the way, love your enemies. How can you not love your own son who is gay? That would make no sense, right?
Well, the other part of it was the friend then said to her, you are actually not a Christian. And my mom said, I don't know that we can really be together anymore. I still love you, but I don't think we can be together anymore, because you have all these lenses on that I don't see.
It's so hard.
It was so hard.
Yeah.
They stayed friends, and and my mom actually ended up helping her come back to her son. But I remember my mom saying, that's not a reason.
Yeah, because it's more important to be in community.
It's absurd. Yeah.
Right. So we have to try and keep the lines of communication open so that we can learn from each other.
Yes.
Because we're not stagnant, right? We're always changing. We're always growing. And there's always a chance that people will come around.
But there's that judgment piece that's in Christianity. Well, it's in all religions, but we hear a lot of it right now, where it's, if you're a Christian, you do A, B, and C,
and you don't do
D,
E, and F, right?
Exactly, and you don't hold space for these other people, and that just is so the opposite, isn't it?
I'll let Sue Ann speak for herself, but I've been taught for all of my early years that in the church, not at home. At home, I was taught very differently. In the church, I was taught I could not love people who were gay, because I was taught the scriptures say they're an abomination to the Lord. And it isn't until we got older, and certainly when we were studying Scripture more seriously, that we realized that we had been badly taught. It's wrongly taught.
Yes.
And it's taught for the wrong reasons. It's not coming from a place of Jesus. It's coming from a personal place where people weren't comfortable with that, thought therefore it must be wrong, and I can use the Bible to
reinforce that.
Exactly. Support my case for this, and therefore people will have to know I'm right because I'm using the Bible to tell them that.
And Jesus loved everyone.
I'm
no
betting
exceptions.
Jesus had gay friends. Because people being homosexual, as we all now know, and if you don't, please hear me when I say this, it is not a lifestyle choice. And
I know, that's a terrible word.
What I love about John Fugelsang is he talks about this in his book, and what he says is some people were dabbling in hate at parties when they were younger, and then it got out of hand. That was a lifestyle choice. But being gay is not a lifestyle choice.
No,
God
absolutely.
created diversity, and God created humans in many different ways, and that is one way that humans are created. And that means we should be loving everyone anyway, no matter what, regardless of even if it was a lifestyle choice, which I don't think it is, you would still love them anyway.
Yeah, it's not a lifestyle choice, but yeah.
It's not a hateful choice. They're talking about, I want to love somebody, but I want to love someone who looks like this instead of like this. Why would you not support the love?
Right, exactly. It's just about being human in all of our different complexities and persuasions. Listen, we could go on and on. We've started to go into some really
shouldn't we?
We should really, like, let's get even more controversial. Like, say something really controversial. I'm kidding. But no, I think I love the new direction. I love that that also you're bringing nature and more of yourselves, into this podcast, because I think people need it and they want to know that you're real, and you're not only guides, but you're human beings who struggle with the same things we all struggle with, but also love the same things.
We do. We struggle every day. I struggle, as you're well aware, like, what should I pray for? What should I not pray for? I don't pray for the Blue Jays to win, even though I really want them to win. I do think...
But you support them.
I completely support them. My wife went to bed.
He prays in his dreams.
My wife went to bed in the 7th inning, and I stayed up till the very end so that I could be dancing around with my dog after they won. I know that there's going to be ways for us to express this, but I really want to make this very clear. We are really hoping that people will hear this and it will inspire them to reach out to us and ask us questions. What is it that you're dealing with? What is it you would like to know more about? What is it that would help you to feel like you are a more fulsome person, that you are better connected, that you are feeling healthier, and so on. But in ways that are spiritually grounded and in ways that we might find some answers or
we don't have the answers.
Well,
but we are happy to create space and have a discussion.
Yes, and provide whatever answers we can in whatever way we can.
Well, I think you provide practice and process for feeling, for being, being and receiving. And, I think the word of the day is to be in relationship, right? To be in relationship with the Creator, with ourselves, with each other, and to be of service through that creation.
I was raised at a time when I think, and a lot of people still believe this, Sunday church was an obligation. It was something you had to do. In some churches, you're taught if you don't, you're going to hell. We don't believe in hell, so I don't believe that's the case. But what I've learned over years is that practice of doing that in community together benefits me, benefits others, and benefits the broader community in a way that I'm only even now starting to understand why that's the case. But initially, I just thought it was just what you did, and because you were supposed to do it, and or you were supposed to go and praise God, and that was the only way you could praise God. And only through time and learning from wise people have I come to the place where I realize That isn't what the point was. There are greater, deeper points to us gathering like that. And so I also invite people to do that, worship with a community that is healthy and that you feel comfortable with and that you can be part of community with. You will benefit greatly from that because of the practice that you are experiencing.
Yes. Well, thank you for practicing with me here and creating this space for us. And I can't wait to talk to you again next week. And we will, after the launch, we're going to gather the questions from both churches. We'll choose maybe we'll do 6 and see what happens. And
we'll probably have enough time to answer 3, right?
Oh, my friends, thank you for joining us today on Two Priests on the Patio. I'm Che Marville, and it is my awesome privilege to be your guide, your host. Until next time.
Thank you, Che.
Thank you.
Two priests on the patio. Sure hope you enjoyed the show. If there's anything you want to know, just ask. Two priests on the patio. Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you for being with us. If this stirred something in you, share the episode and subscribe. The path of awakening isn't linear. It's layered, lived, and often lonely. But you are not alone. We'll meet you in the stillness, in our prayers. We'll meet you in the questions. And until next time, stay compassionate, stay open, stay awake.